Good morning, I'm Megan McCarthy, editor of Sign Africa. Thank you for joining us for the Sustainability in the Printing Industry webinar. Just some house rules. If you have a question for the panelists, please post these in the Q&A section. The chat is just for general banter. Please also remember to take our polls in the poll section. The webinar will be facilitated by Tiffany Fernandez, founder and senior brand and marketing strategist at SEPTAs, as well as Abisha Katarere, Printing SA's marketing manager and BBBEE specialist. Our panelists for today include Grant Portkeeter, general manager of Fujifilm Graphic Systems, Anya Curtin, product manager for wide format at Fujifilm Graphic Systems, Dr. Abdul Majid Mohammed, CEO of Printing SA, Dr. Philen Nyende, CEO of FPM CETA, as well as PK Naika, the General Manager, Research, Planning and Reporting from FPM CETA. So Tiffany and Abisha, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you, Megan. And we'd just like to welcome everybody to this session. And before we kick off, we'd just like a word from Grant, who is the Fujifilm Graphic Systems General Manager.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Tiffany, and thank you to the panel. Thank you, everyone, for taking your time out today to join us. I think in this topic of discussion that is at the forefront of everyone's minds in business at the moment. You know, with COVID being at the forefront of everyone's lives, it's been quite easy to ignore the ongoing environmental crisis that we're faced with globally. There's a global demand from consumers and the government to have a more sustainable economy. This is also vital for the printing industry if it wants to shape its future. Printing needs to become more planet-friendly. There are many changes and improvements that printers can start making in their businesses to achieve this. The future of printing will not only be about printing for profit, but also about making customers and consumers more aware of the environmental impact and together helping them build more sustainable businesses over time. The Fujifilm Group has drawn up its Sustainable Value Plan 2030, SVP 2030. And under this plan, the Fujifilm Group will introduce further measures to resolve social issues through our business activities, including the launch of innovative technologies, products and services in our aim to develop into a company that can make a greater contribution to creating a sustainable society over time. Thank you.
Thanks, Grant. And I think that's painted a nice picture as to the core sort of message of this webinar that we're on and why sustainability is such a big part of the global agenda as well as the local one. So before we get into the core topic of sustainability in this session, this is obviously a session that's part of a two-part webinar series. And I just wanted to go back and recap what we addressed in part one between Printing SA and Fujifilm, you know, when we speak to the impact and the measures around the rebuild and the recovery of the industry. Can you just bring some key insights and a recap from part one, Dr. Mohammed?
You know, we talked about the mayhem and destruction that happened in July and the recovery sort of approaches that were available for people that needed some help. And we mentioned the fact that DTIC and DSBD and many government departments actually came to the fore and gave some support, you know, and people or companies that were in dire straits just simply had to apply for this funding. And what I have gathered is that many of them have actually secured funding, very necessary at this stage to get them up on their feet once more.
That's great. And Grant, from your perspective, just a recap on the impact and the measures for the industry.
Yes, thanks, Tiffany. I think just to, I suppose, agree with Dr. Mohammed. I think the challenges we faced in the print industry, and certainly, again, speaking to a lot of the customers, I mean, the COVID and insurrection played a massive role in job loss, reduction in pay, a lot of social issues that come out of that in terms of people being unemployed. Obviously, that's affected the economy greatly. I guess really the concept of part one was really to understand the impact that's had, share insights so that we can start developing this blueprint of the future and how we recover the industry, not only the printing industry, but I guess industry as a whole, and how we start rebuilding the South African economy.
Perfect, thank you. And I think that's a nice sort of entry point, an introduction, which Abisha will take over from here, where we are introducing our latest panel member. Just on mute, Abisha.
Thank you so much. I think that's the most famous used phrase in the last 2 years, which is you're on mute. Thank you so much, Grant and Dr. Abdul. And I think my line of questioning, which was a nice segue, is going to be posed at the FPNM CETA. And I would like to welcome Dr. Feleng Yende, CEO of the FPNM CETA, and Mr. PK Naiker. And my question to the CETA would be, you know, how is the FPNM CETA supporting the printing sector through this rebuild and recovery that Fujifilm has coined as an apt phrase for what we've just gone through? And I know that you guys support Printing SA specifically, but please give us some insight into what is your strategy for the sector in the next year or two?
Thank you very much, Abisha, and good morning to the panelists and to all stakeholders. My name is PK Naiker, and I'm the General Manager for Planning, Reporting, and Research in the FPNM CETA. I think, you know, when one looks at the future sustainability of the printing, packaging industries, obviously, you know, I think an issue like sustainability has to be informed and underpinned by, you know, ensuring that the industry has obviously a proper growth strategy and a master plan in place. I think, you know, way back in 2013 when Dr. Yende, you know, was appointed at the CETA, she noticed this as a gap. And what we said is that we got to ensure, like even the, you know, we noticed that our other industries had these, you know, growth strategies in place, and we noticed a gap in the printing and packaging industry. So what has happened since then in ensuring that, you know, the future sustainability of the industry is that we have partnered both with Printing South Africa and with the South African Typographical Union in putting, you know, research in place. Because we believe that to ensure, obviously, that the industry grows, that the industry becomes obviously innovative, this all has to be informed by research. So we have funded, a few research projects in partnership with the institutions in the printing and packaging industry to address, these key pillars. But what is very important is that, you know, when we form these strategies, and I noticed that these strategies are now starting to become fruition in the printing and packaging industry, that when we form these or develop these, key growth strategies and master plans, we got to ensure that there are proper pillars to these, functional pillars. Like if you look at the printing and packaging industry, they're quite high up in technology upgrade. They're quite high up in terms of productivity. I see that, we're looking at future sustainability of the industry from a waste management perspective. So we got to ensure that, we embed greener production. We look at competitiveness improvement as an industry. We look at skills development as a separate pillar. We must look at SMME support. So these are key pillars, that should inform, your strategy going forward.
Yes, no, absolutely.
What we also need to look at. Yes, Abisha?
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you. And I think you touched on a key point there, which is something that we as Printing SA have been working on quite vigorously. And I think I will throw this question back at Dr. Mohammed, which is, we've made some inroads with the industry growth strategy as well as the industry master plan. Would you just like to give us some insight into where we are with that and what that means in terms of the long-term sustainability of the sector?
Yeah, thank you, Abisha. I think with the master plan process, we've had some serious engagements with GTIC, who are the lead sort of agency in terms of developing master plans for all the manufacturing sector as a whole. So they've got at that advanced stage very many plans for for various sectors. And for our sector, they now be taking us seriously. And we had a hearing at the presidency's office where they've now at least put our need as well as a master plan process on the table for the start, which is good. Then on the other side as well, from DSPD and the DSAC, which is the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture, they've developed what is called a creative sector master plan. And we are one of 4 subsectors playing a key role in terms of printing and publications in that particular sector. So basically the aim of the master plans is to look at, re-energizing the sector in terms of exports, imports, looking at local job creation, sustainable investments all around from overseas as well as locally, and also to ensure localization of content and that, work is done here in this country rather than abroad.
Yes.
And we're hoping to play a big role through the SACO and the AU and the ACFTA as well in terms of getting inroads into the rest of the continent. So yeah, absolutely. I think that's the one side of the master plan. In terms of the industry growth strategy, I think we've been very sort of grateful for the help rendered by the FPNM CETA. They have sponsored various top-level research that was done both by SATU, the union, the South African Typographical Union, and they've done some Institute of Futures research as to what the work of the future is going to look like and the kind of skills that he or she will require to be sort of, abreast with. And on our side as well, through the likes of BMI, we have also developed some sort of research reports that actually give sort of, information around what the sector is about and what the sector really needs. So all in all, we are looking at an industry growth strategy going forward in conjunction with SATU, and we're hoping to get there with the master plan processes.
Thank you for that, Doc. Grant, I suppose this is absolutely where you would come in from a business point of view. What does it actually mean in terms of how you communicate to your clients? And you've heard that people are working on industrial master plans in the skill space. How is that translating for you guys as Fujifilm as a business, and what would you advise the business people that are on the forum?
Bisha, thank you. I think the key for businesses at this point in time is I think everyone always needs to take a step back and need to take a holistic review of their business, make a holistic review of the business. I think take a full look at the supply chain, everything from beginning to end in that full entire business process. It relates to procurement, understanding their suppliers, the sourcing initiatives that they have in place, how they're sourcing, where they're sourcing from, etc. I think Dr. Mohamed's touched on that. Got to look at the workflow processes within your business. How do you streamline those processes with the aim of reducing waste, with saving time, etc., etc. Technology and workflow solutions are critical in any business to achieve that streamlining of those workflow processes. So looking at continually developing and investing in technologies to grow your business, to make it more efficient, to reduce energy consumption. Waste management is obviously key. I mean, we speak to that all the time, the papers, the substrates, again, where you're sourcing it and what are you doing with it? When you're done with it, what are you doing with the offcuts of that waste? The inks, how are you disposing of your ink once you've printed and the leftover ink, the inks that are purged out of your machine, the aluminium, the recycling initiatives, what have you got in place? So there's many, many initiatives of that nature that businesses need to start looking at, Abisha. I've touched on energy management and CO2 emissions is at the forefront. For Fujifilm globally, we've extended our targets to reduce our CO2 emissions from 30% right up to 45% globally by FY. As part of our plan for 2030, we want to reduce our CO2 emissions by 45% globally. So these are targets that we put in place. And I think speaking to what Mr. Naik has touched on, training and education, that's an ongoing process. We're going to be continuously training and educating not only our staff, our suppliers, our customers, but consumers, and finding ways to continue that education program. And I suppose emphasizing the importance of sustainability. I guess looking at logistics, delivery, all those type of things. And again, I think it speaks to the starting point of your business, right through the chain and right through to the end of the process, and how you deliver that to the customer, I guess would be sort of that.
And I think we did touch on that earlier before we started this discussion, which was, you know, business reprocessing engineering is a part of sustainability, where we need to start looking at how people have designed their operations in order to become more efficient and more productive. And I can appreciate what Fuji is doing about that in terms of your guys' current solutions. And Anya, don't worry, we haven't forgotten about you. We're going to come to you. Mr. Naika, sorry, I had one more question for you, which is, I mean, we've seen the Future of Jobs report, as well as, you know, we can see a dynamic shift in the way that we are talking about job creation as well as job displacement, and the heightened pressure on the market in terms of labor productivity. The skills gap is widening because technology is playing a great influence. And we just want to understand, I know we work hand in hand with the SETA, but can you give us some insights into how is the SETA's medium long-term strategy going to you know, fill that void that is currently existing in the market, especially for our print sector?
No, thank you very much, Abhisha. Yeah, just to respond to you, you know, we as a SETA, we have continuous discussions with the printing industry. We have very focused workshops, etc., where we address these issues, you know, in terms of future and emerging skills. And it's something that we really need to be serious about. It's something that we need to look into. For example, you know, we continuously draw up what is known as sectoral occupations in high demand. And whenever we do that, obviously we expect the industry also to assist us by projecting what would be the future in emerging skills, you know, in a couple of years down the line that would create jobs. So when we talk about occupations in demand, what would keep current employers in employment and what would also create jobs for the unemployed. But what we also stress upon is that we need to continuously upskill and multi-skill the workforce. We got to ensure that our workforce, you know, have portable skills where they could use across various industry subsectors. We focus on flexible workforce. You know, people must be able to multitask. There must be a knowledgeable workforce. You know, some of the things that you would hear now, obviously, and something that the printing and packaging and signage industry needs to be at the forefront of are issues of, you know, we are talking now digitization, digitalization. We are talking fourth industrial revolution. We are talking now about things like automation, robotics, mechatronics, advanced computer skills, artificial intelligence. If you want to ensure, obviously, that your business is competitive, that your business is sustainable, these are some of the skills and the future occupations that are identified in the Future Jobs Report and the International Labour Organization. So this is what would make you competitive and remain in jobs, you know, come obviously 5 to 10 years time. So I'll leave it at there.
Okay, Mr. Naika, I think you've hit the nail on the head, and it really gives a nice transition into some of our polling questions. So I know Mr. Mo Jogi is one of our guests at the moment, and he's also a representative of Printing SA's Central Chamber. And I think the question goes to yourself, Dr. Mohammed, as well as to Mr. Potgieter. And Mo is asking, what are the key focus areas of research that has been undertaken by Printing SA as well as by Fujifilm in terms of the circular economy? And is that part of your growth strategy going forward? So, Doc, I suppose if you could start and then we can move to Grant.
Okay, in terms of the circular economy, the whole thrust is on reusing, recycling, sort of repurposing things that have been manufactured to find other purposes as well. And the main reason is that we shouldn't, you know, any item that's produced should not end up in a landfill. preferably before it goes into the landfill, it should be taken up by another industry and repurposed for another purpose and sort of recreated in another form. So yes, the circular economy is very, very important. I think in terms of our thrust of the research that we've done so far, the Institute of Futures Research did talk about the gig economy generally in terms of where the workforce is going and what kinds of skills they will need to service or to be a part of this new sort of creation of the workforce of the future. And I think the BMI as well, they've also touched on things that what companies currently are doing in different sectors require of us to be doing or focusing on, and the fact that we need to market things differently, for different product lines and do things on the go, so as it were.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you, and I could speak to that because I was quite I was a big part of the process in terms of generating the BMI research, and Mo, to answer your question, we didn't just look at the print sector; we looked at the entire value chain of our industry, and there are some great insights that you can access from the research that we've done. So if you just go to www.printingsa.org. As a Printing SA member, through your members portal, you'll be able to access all the research that we've done. But I think that is industry-wide. I think, Grant, you can speak to this from a Fujifilm point of view. Circular economy, what innovations, what are you seeing? How do we do business better?
Abisha, I mean, it's at the forefront of what we do. I think, as you know, Fujifilm globally have been, at the forefront of innovation for many years. I think since 1934, since we were established. But I think even more recently during the COVID times, we saw how on the medical side of our business, how we were very, very instrumental in manufacturing ingredients, key ingredients for vaccinations, AI-based diagnostic imaging software solutions, to go a few, I mean, reagents for new virus mutation detection, that type of thing. So on the medical side, we're always at the forefront of innovation. Coming back to the print side of things, I think where we very, very play a key role is obviously we're very much about sustainable ink in production. So our inks are really always focused around UV ink production or aqueous inkjet production. Those are very, very environmentally friendly inks. So you won't see us playing in the solvent ink game, anything of that type of nature. We have programs in place globally that we refer to as, and we've trademarked as PlateSense, which is a program which looks after aluminium recycling. So in essence, we discount the price of our plates, for example, to customers, and then we take care of the disposal of aluminium to ensure that that circular economy is actually seen to and taken care of. We've obviously found in the past that aluminium doesn't get recycled, it doesn't get disposed of properly, so on and so forth. So we've developed these types of initiatives globally to make sure that this is in place, to make sure that that circular economy comes into effect and that recycling, those aluminium plates go back into the economy in some form or fashion. Those are just a few examples. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Grant, for that. And I think, you're giving us a great insight. I suppose a lot of our delegates on the webinar today are business people that want to learn, how Fuji is doing business and doing it more sustainably. As well as Doc, thank you so much for those insights, because it gives us a reflection in terms of, as a federation, how are we influencing policy in order to determine what the future of our space looks like. And that being said, Doc, I would like to ask you, back to you, and PK, please, I would also like you to chime in here. And, we are constantly talking about how disruptive the COVID-19 has been in terms of changing business models, in terms of the profound impact it's had on employment. And over the coming years, we will see that how we used to look at occupations that were in demand 10 or 5 years ago, it's changed. And the pace of things is changing consistently. So I suppose, Dr. Mohammed, if you would like to give me insight or give us all insight into what is Printing SA doing from protecting the industry legislatively, and I'm talking more in terms of sustainability, And then my second question would be to PK in terms of how is the FPNM SETA gearing to ensure that the skills within our industry are going to continue to be relevant according to, you know, what the global migration of skills is going to be. So Dr. Mohammed, if I can start with you.
Sure. I think the government has played a key role in terms of enacting some regulations that will impact our industry at large. So the first one of note is the Waste Management Act, which was recently promulgated and is now in place. So this basically what it does is the aim is to minimize landfills and to encourage the circular economy. And the act is now saying that the producer, and the producer could be any brand owner, importer, manufacturer, or converter, who place in excess of 10 tons of identified products onto the market on an annual basis, must register with the recognized producer responsibility organization to ensure that waste produced is managed optimally up to the end of its life. So the producer is now obliged to register with the DFFE and to pay EPR, that is extended producer responsibility fees, to a PRO. And any material stream that produces in excess of 10 tons is liable to a payment to the PRO. So basically what the PRO will do is is going to support the recycling value chain to ensure that there's capacity for collection and recycling of all items. Also ensure that there's an end user market for recycled material, drive better product design, ensure that consumers also encourage separation at source, and encourage all sorts of recycling activities. So they're going to put in place measurements and reports that will ensure that all these things get done. And obviously the monies collected by the PROs are going to be responsibly used on behalf of the members. So currently there are 7 major PROs that cover paper, packaging, plastic, glass, polyolefin, polystyrene, metals, aluminum, and vinyls. So that's the first significant thing that has come about, and it had to be in place as from the 5th of November. The second one that I'd like to talk about briefly is the Air Quality Act, Section 23. Now, any owner of an existing or the new printing industry needs to ensure that any organic solvent consumption threshold that exceeds 25 tons per year is going to be accounted for one way or the other. And these companies need to put in mitigation equipment at huge costs to the company's coffers. So the one type of thing is called a carbon absorption one, which ensures that there's technology for volatile organic compounds to be captured one way or the other and then rechanneled to something else. And just for the small member company, if they want to put in some facility to manage 25 tons of these VOCs, we're talking of a cost of between 2 and 6 million. So it's quite a high cost thing for smaller companies to actually be involved with. Then the second one is thermal oxidizers, which is another way of reducing the carbon content. And again, for small printing companies, will be an investment of 3 million. So what we've done with DFFE is we've actually proposed that we should not be regulated in terms of Section 23 of this Act. And we also, as an industry, we make a commitment that alternative printing materials will be used, that will be more affordable, and also that the department could investigate a tax, perhaps on organic solvent usage. And this tax should be offset against the additional cost of printing material to encourage the change on behalf of member companies. And we're hoping that our inputs to the DFFE will actually receive some attention soon. Then there's also the National Climate Change Bill. This bill is currently in the process of being fine-tuned and consultations are being held. But the idea of this bill is to manage and combat climate change in general. I think let me stop there and give PK a chance, perhaps.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mohammed. Yeah, if I just may come in. Yeah, from a qualifications perspective, what I must say is that the printing, packaging, signage industry, you have what is known as an organic learning system, with a proper career pathing framework. When I looked at your career pathing framework, I've noticed that you've got qualifications that start from NQF level 1 that moves right up to NQF level 7 in terms of a management development program, which is all excellent, very well. When I look at the industry, they've got all the trades, the sector-specific trades, all of them are currently being aligned and updated and obviously trying to meet QCTO and SAQA requirements. But for me, what is critical in terms of the qualifications development process is that these qualifications, when they are getting updated, you got to make sure that they are relevant, they fit for purpose, they address like embedded issues such as, what Dr. Mohammed has been talking about legislation, about the SHEC requirements, SHEC requirements, safety, health, environment, quality. It is only through obviously young learners registering to these qualifications that they would be able to understand, the consequences, like for example, of waste management, what it would mean to the industry, and obviously irresponsible behavior, would result obviously in the industry suffering and becoming less sustainable going forward. But further to that, in terms of are we addressing these matters, we're also addressing it through what is known as the Economic Recovery and Reconstruction Program. Because when you look at this program, what has happened was that the DET has identified, to get in partnership with the FPNM SETA, 100 occupations that are in high demand, where they believe that if we start investing in these occupations, if we start partnering with key stakeholders within industry in terms of these occupations, there would be some kind of economic recovery and sustainability and growth, within the various industries. But I must, give Dr. Yende here much credit. What Dr. Yende has done is that when we have implemented now projects with regard to economic recovery and reconstruction, we looked at future and emerging, skills. We looked at skills that relate to fourth industrial revolution, that relates to innovation, that relates to digitization, that relates to entrepreneurship, because we believe this is what is going to contribute to growth and sustainability of all of our industries. So we are, in terms of, the funding windows that are going to open in January, we are urging our key stakeholders, more especially our employee organizations and associations, etc., to come up with such projects where we look at those type of skills that will promote future sustainability of the industry. So let me leave it there then, Abhishek.
We are so blessed to have the FPNM SETA today, because it means that in January, the funding window opens. So everybody start putting your applications forward. Mr. Naika has just told us that there is funds available to train the future jobs of the economy. And I want to go to Anya. And Anya, I know you, obviously you speak to the customer, and tell us what are some of the pain points that you found with the customer that you are trying to drive them to change their thought process in becoming more environmentally friendly, as well as being more productive and making the cost a lot less.
Yeah, look, I think, thank you, Abisha. Like any other business with this sort of time, we all know everybody wants to save cost, but I guess for the long-term view, we need to look at the bigger picture, what equipment are you investing in, what consumables are you using, and what is the repercussion of these consumables, and so I think Fujifilm's focus have always been very green, and with the thought in a sustainable future, not just money-wise, but for the environment as well. So pain points, I think it will always be there for the customers, but they need to align with suppliers that can supply the right equipment, consumables, and lean on them for advice.
No, absolutely. And I think consumables is something that we seldom talk about. We're always talking about emissions from the actual presses. However, the actual waste is coming from what you're putting into it, as opposed to what that press is putting out. Grant, if I could ask you, as Fujifilm, do you guys have any programs in place that will help small businesses to I suppose the term is diversify their operations so that they become more not only environmentally sustainable, but sustainable as a business.
Thanks, Abisha. I think, I think we've got numerous plans, and we'd love to speak to people. I think, without going into too much detail, but again, as a global organization, we have a lot of initiatives in place, and I've spoken to PlateSense already. So, our traditional commercial printers, such as our lithographers and our lithography businesses, we have our PlateSense model that's in place. Certainly from an ink disposal perspective, we've got a lot of ideas and initiatives that we can share around that and how to do that. Dumping it down the drain is not an option. However, believe it or not, that does happen in the industry, and it's sad to see and hear that those type of things do happen. But this is the sort of education that we need to bring. I think some of the key initiatives that we'll be looking at in the new year, and hopefully in conjunction with the people on this panel, is putting together a training academy, sponsored by Fujifilm, where we will start looking at how we start bringing new minds to the industry with new thinking and with sustainability at the core of that education and training process, without a doubt. Because I think quite sadly, the industry's lost its attraction. And I think it's key for us to start understanding that there's a lot more. And I think consumers are driving that. And we need to listen to the consumers. And as printers and as suppliers to that print industry, we certainly need to sit up, take notice, and start listening to the consumers and finding ways to develop, better and keep innovating and finding new solutions. And we can only do that, I guess, in conjunction with our customers, with those consumers, and with the likes of the industry bodies such as Printing SA, FPM, and SETA. So but there's tons of initiatives, Abisha. So without harping on them too much, I think we'd encourage people to get in touch with us, and we'd happily sit down, meet with them face to face, and discuss some of those initiatives that we have in place.
Thank you so much, and I think this forum is ripe for that. I think all the right stakeholders are here, and we encourage all of our delegates to please, we've got polls that we're running in the background, so please complete the polls so that we can, feel your sentiment about, what we are offering to you at the moment, and, it gives us insight into how we need to, direct our efforts going forward. Dr. Mohammed, I've got one more question for you before, Tiffany, I hand over to you, which is greenwashing. Obviously plays a major role into how we consume products. The likes of Printing SA has worked very closely with Twosize, which is an Australian founded organization, but headquartered now in the UK. Would you like to just shed some light in terms of the impact of greenwashing, and just to educate some of our delegates that are on this forum at the moment, what is costing the industry and how we can mitigate, that effect?
Yeah, sure. So like you said, Twosize is a global organization headquartered in the UK. So we've got an active branch in Johannesburg as well. And we have, as Printing SA, worked very closely with them. So what Twosize actually does is they try to improve standards and practices and promote the sustainability of the graphics and communications industry at large. And the key role they do is they dispel common environmental misconceptions about the fact that print or paper is actually hazardous to the environment. And I think they've got a beautiful story on the website, if you go there, where you read about the various sort of positives of what paper does, and the fact that it's one of the best recyclable materials that you can sort of use currently. Now, what this campaign about greenwashing is doing is that we find this happening in lots of emails that we do receive, sometimes from insurance companies and the large banks, where they say we've gone online to so-called save the environment. They use that kind of sort of thrust in terms of their marketing. But in actual fact, what they are saying is that they don't want to print on paper anymore, and they want to encourage we as customers to go and use the online sort of version of that particular statement that they're trying to send us as customers. But what we're saying is that a lot of this, the way they're marketing this, digital aspect of their customer sort of engagement is actually greenwashing, because there's no evidential sort of records and basis on which to make this claim that going digital or using email is actually softer and better for the environment than what paper is, because paper gives you a solid record in black and white, which many people want to keep on a record because sometimes you need it for legal or SARS sort of returns or whatever. So you need that sort of physical paper document. And that is the kind of campaign that they are promoting, this idea of fighting against greenwashing that is being done by some of these corporates. Now, we also from Printing SA, we've also done the same. We've joined them in many of these efforts. And I think one of the key sort of suppliers in this particular chain of, ensuring that sort of mail still gets sort of out there to people in their hands is we've engaged with SAPO at the highest levels, the post office, because we know that SAPO is in a bit of a state of decline. Many post offices are closing down. They're restructuring their whole business to make it more viable. And they're not in a very financially very stable place. But given those challenges, we're trying to go to them and say, you know what, let's work hand in hand with you to regenerate your business, because if SAPO's business is guaranteed where there is mail delivery to homes and subscriptions can be reignited, then obviously the Direct Marketing Association and all other customers and clients that SAPO has lost over the past 3-4 years would possibly consider coming back. So I think all in all, we're playing in that space to get back, something that was the core business of SAPO and let them focus on what their core business is, and hopefully to the betterment of both organizations, both themselves and ourselves.
Thank you for that insight, Dr. Mohammed. And I think it's quite critical that we start to debunk these myths, because our children are actually now on tablets and cell phones, and they are reading the fact that paper is bad. So we need to re-engineer that process and that thought, and we're hard at work doing that as Printing SA. I'm not sure if Dr. Yende has joined us now. I would like to pose a question. If Dr. Yende, if you are there. Okay, perhaps not at this point in time.
I am in the background, but I just have a problem with my camera. I must say that I got excited when I heard Dr. Mohammed talking about paper, and I was like, let me quickly just put forward my viewpoint to say there's a lot of myths surrounding paper and printing vis-a-vis digitization. And I think it is our responsibility as industry to perhaps even package a campaign where we can be able to show people the benefits of perhaps embracing both markets. And also try and repel the myth that suggests that paper releases a lot of carbon dioxide.
Yes.
Into the environment. In fact, in the printing sector, we have got a lot of interventions, greening related interventions that are meant to actually address the issues of environment and clean environment, healthy environment, and all of this. So it is a myth that paper is the precursor or main cause of making the environment unhealthy, releasing a lot of carbon dioxide into the environment. We know for a fact that there's a lot of benefits that are also coming out of paper. Remember, paper comes from a process of forestry.
Yes.
And it comes from the processing of the trees that we have, but we have got a safe and an environmental way, clean way that looks and informs the process of paper manufacturing. So I think there's a huge opportunity for us to then be able to talk and educate the public about carbon emissions and printing subsector. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Yende, and I'm so grateful for you joining us. We really appreciate you taking your time to be part of this platform. And I think Grant, Dr. Mohammed, Tiffany, Mr. Naika, we've all got a lot of work to do to collaborate in order to realize this vision of creating a sustainable sector. that recognizes, all of the touch points that, we've all, dealt with in this session. That being said, Tiffany, over to you.
Thanks, Abisha. I just see some questions that have popped up. I don't know if we want to address that before we go into summarizing our blueprint.
Yeah, so to the panelists, and please feel free, I will take it, I suppose, from Doc through the panel. There's a question here that says, what is the panel's view on EPR, which is the Extender Producer Program? Waste management.
Yeah. Look, I think I did talk briefly about it. Basically, the extended producer responsibility is that the government is actually saying that whoever manufactures anything that's in excess of 10 tons and it comes into the environment, then that producer needs to take the responsibility of disposing or discarding or reusing that item at the end of its life cycle. So EPR are in place. There are 7 that are very active. And I think each industry must now sort of look at itself, look at the kinds of products they produce, because some of them might go over paper and packaging into perhaps labeling or into bottling or into can manufacturing. So there might be, a company might be involved in 1 or 2 of these EPRs, and they have to register with both or 3 of them, or whatever the case may be, depending on the kind of product they produce. And obviously, once they are registered with that EPR, they need to pay the necessary fees, and that fees will ensure that these items get recycled at the end of life.
So I think, Dr. Mohammed, the question more so being, our view, because I suppose, we deal with a lot of legislation. I can rattle them off in terms of Copyright Amendment Bill, Imprint Act, Waste Management Act, Air Quality Control Act. There are so many. And I think what the delegate is trying to understand is, what are your thoughts behind it? Do you think it's a progressive legislation, or is it a legislation that might hinder people's ability to engage in business and be more productive?
Look, on the negative side, there's definitely a cost involved. But I think on the positive side, at least what is being done is we are avoiding the landfill sort of getting filled at the rate that it is getting filled at the moment. So all in all, what government is saying that, and they're not actually managing this thing. They have asked us as a private sector to get involved, establish these EPRs ourselves and manage it ourselves as well. So it's really a partnership between government and the private sector. And these PROs are in existence as separate entities from government. Fair enough, they do this, have to report to government, but at the same time, they've got the opportunity to use the monies they've collected in terms of, what the industry requires of itself to sort of regenerate and reinfuse itself and find alternative solutions to the waste that's being produced. So I think it's a good blend between private and government.
Thank you. Fair comment. Grant, from business, what do you think about the Waste Management Act, EPR?
I can only reiterate everything that's been said. I think I can't add too much more to that, Abisha, only to say that it's key. It's a massive initiative for us from our side, and I don't talk about us globally. I talk about us in South Africa. I think it's critical that people are thinking about it all the time and that we're adhering to the bill. I think it's critical, not for us now, it's for our future. It's for our children, the generations to come, that if we don't start paying attention to these things, and I mean that with absolute sincerity, that somewhere down the line, we're going to suffer, because of that type of negligence. So it's key.
Absolutely. Mr. Naika and Dr. Yende, if you're still on the call, I would just like to ask you, from one of our guests has asked us, maybe we should have included somebody from government, but I know that technically we have included, the FPNM CETA, because you do represent government to a degree. Would you like to just impart on us as a parting shot, what are the future plans for the CETA in terms of, generating a ecosystem in terms of all of the sectors that you guys have purview over and oversight? to become a lot more efficient in sustainability, because I don't think that it's something that is going to be neglected for far too long.
No, thank you very much, Abisha. If Dr. Yende want to maybe just come with a few comments first, and then most probably I will give some concluding comments in terms of a response. But what I would like to say is Dr. Yende has already mentioned, as innovative as Dr. Yende is, she's also mentioned that, there's always opportunities in terms of us partnering with the industry stakeholders in terms of some of these projects like EPR, etc., with regard to waste management. But maybe Dr. Yende, a few comments first, and then maybe I could give, I always need to observe the protocol. Thank you very much.
Mr. Naka, you can take the question, it's fine.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Yende, most appreciated. Yeah, I think, the issue of waste management and sustainability is a key issue. Recently, we had COP26, I think, where we were looking at, climate change and sustainability of the environment. And we know that obviously in terms of most of our industries, these issues do impact. And we expect, obviously, our industries to manage these in a very responsible way. So what we're also saying is that because these issues are key to the sustainability of industry, we need to ensure that, these become part of core modules, and these are embedded within the qualifications as well. So that from a very young age, that people are, the youth that come into the industry, they are conscientized, they become aware of these key issues and how to manage these issues responsibly as well. I think I've already mentioned that and emphasized that. But other than that, I think, that is what I got to say. Thank you, Abisha.
No, thank you for that, Mr. Naika. I think, overall, we are designing the blueprint. And Tiffany, I think you want to come in here and just let everybody know what the vision is.
Thank you, Abisha, and thank you for all the contributions so far. I think we started this initiative with the idea that, or the note that there needs to be a drive in the rebuild and recovery, and also the growth of the industry. So we put this panel of minds together to be able to bring the industry some insight. And what we want to be able to give back to the industry is some kind of tangible blueprint to refer back to. And this is only the start of the blueprint. As you can see, there's lots to discuss, there's lots to still do. So I just want to go around the table and ask each panel member, just in summary, from your particular viewpoints and sector, how can you just summarize this blueprint for our audiences? Dr. Mohammed? Sure.
I think the one thing we haven't touched on is the carbon sort of impact of the COP26. And the one thing that comes out for me very clearly is that there's a need for us as industry to look at carbon calculators. In other words, what is the impact of the machinery and equipment we've got and the kind of work we do for the industry at large? What is the impact of the carbon emissions, and how can we decrease or lessen that particular impact? And I think that is very key to what came out of the COP26. I think other than that, if companies are on the verge of purchasing new equipment, they need to look at, again, the carbon sort of footprint of the thing, as well as the cleaner air quality emissions that come out from such equipment, and make sort of choices wisely in terms of which equipment to choose. And obviously, we've got one company online today, but we can look at all these things in terms of a cost-benefit analysis as well. Then I think we need to look at securing paper and board, and that are some companies that are forestry compliant. The FSC compliance is important. We need to look at inks and other consumables if these things are also environmentally friendly and not harmful in any way. And all in all, we need to focus on the recyclability of items that we manufacture. And we need to look at this from the design stage to the end of its life. So I think those would be my parting comments. Thanks.
Perfect, thank you. And I'll pose that same sort of question to the FPNM CETA, just in sort of closing.
No, thank you very much. Yeah, in terms of closing, I think, the issue of greener production and waste management, these are key issues in all industries. what we are saying is that from a skills development perspective, obviously we got to manage these, to ensure that there's greater advocacy for a greener production going forward. But we also saying that I think in terms of a concluding statement, we are saying we got to embrace these and embed these within our qualifications framework. The issue of managing your waste paper, managing your effluents that you would get from the ink runoff that goes into the drains. These are key issues that can be managed through the through qualifications development and our learning system within the printing and packaging industries. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And yes, and lastly, Grant, from a business perspective, just your blueprint summary for us.
Thanks, Tiffany. I think, again, sustainability has always been at the core of Fujifilm as a business. I think it will remain at the core of Fujifilm business. And we will continue to innovate in that space, both locally and globally. We've been an industry leader in that space, and we will continue to be that. And we'll continue to look at ways to improve, to grow, to educate, and that will be at the core of everything that we do. Again, in my entry statement that I made, I said we can no longer be thinking about printing for profit, because I think for a long, long time that's been the case. That's why we find people procuring the way they procure, doing things the way they do things. We really need to start taking the future into consideration. And my firm belief is that those that have sustainability at the core of their focus for their businesses will be the people that will reap the benefits in the long run. So again, I think the circular economy needs to be at the front of mind. The type of equipment that you're buying, the consumables that you're putting through that machine, and what you're doing with it from a waste management perspective need to be key in your business. And what you're doing about educating not only your customers, your staff, your other suppliers and stakeholders needs to be a daily conversation that you're having in your business. So yeah, I think from Fujifilm's perspective, I think that's my wrap up. I think I'd like to, obviously, I don't know if we've got time, but obviously we'd like to just take a note over to Anya and Tiffany. I'm not sure if we've got time to do that still.
Yeah, we do still have a couple of minutes. So let's just have a word from our product manager, the sponsor of this initiative, Anya.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Tiffany. Now, so just continuing on from the first webinar that we have, I mentioned that Fujifilm launched the new blueprint for white format. And with the formulation of this blueprint, we have to ask a few questions. And one of the main questions was, how do we as a supplier to the print industry think even more sustainable so that we can also support the print manufacturers take on these initiatives? And in this formulation, part of the blueprint, Fujifilm answered to this by launching the QT Ultra R2. That's a high-speed 3 and 5 meter UV roll printer. And just that the printer is pretty much designed on sustainability. And just to give you a few things is the machine is an option for UV LED option, which can save you up to 50% energy consumption, which is a massive saving, not just for the print manufacturer, but it's a huge relief on the environment. And secondly, there's 2 ink sets available for this machine, and both of these have Green Guard certification. So I think we've been speaking so much about Green Guard certification and green inks, and why is this important? So there's a study that was done that people spend about 90% of their time indoors, and the pollution can be up to 5 times more than outdoors. And this is mainly contributed by the VOCs from inks in the environment indoors. And with the Green Guard certification of our inks, you can be sure that the UV inks that we use are safe for wall coverings. So I think that's a massive contribution to the sustainability. And I think just listening to what everybody's been saying, it's become very clear that the end user have been pushing to have more sustainable print application in their retail stores, for example. So from product packaging to signage. And I think it's important that print manufacturers start looking at how can they benefit from the equipment, the consumables that suppliers are offering to be in the running for these sort of print contracts and be eligible for more sustainable printing options. So yeah, I think all in all, Fujifilm has been a pioneer of the UV jet innovations for over 20 years. And the commitment is definitely there that we will continue looking at building sustainable equipment, manufacturing sustainable consumables across the graphic systems. So there's a short little video that I just want you guys to join us, and then that should be a wrap. Thank you.
Thanks, Anya.
Great, thank you. So yeah, we've come to the end of our session, and just in conclusion, we'd just like to thank all our panel members for their contribution into this. It's certainly not the end. It's only the start of these discussions. So yes. If you look at the polls, there's a little sort of question at the end, which enables us to be able to mail the full version of the blueprint through to you after the session. So if you click yes on that, we'll give you the full version. And yeah, keep checking our social media channels. We've got loads of updates in terms of the industry master plan, the industry growth strategy plan that's coming about. And it's obviously, like this initiative, it's very much a collaborative effort, and we encourage feedback into these plans so we can help grow this as an industry. And on the last sort of point, from a Fujifilm perspective, we've got some exciting news. One of the product sponsors of this series, which is Acuity Prime, is landing in South Africa very, very soon. So we would, if you're in the wide format industry, get in touch with us and you can get exclusive first looks into this equipment. So just want to thank everybody, and we'll see you on the next session.